right? I mean, there are so many debates. There are debates and there are debates, but this is possibly the one, right, in the Senate that's going to, like, people think it, it all hinges on whether or not the Democrats win Pennsylvania. Of course, that's a lot on Pennsylvania because there are other races that are very close. It's all close. It's all close all over. Everyone's sort of fixated on different kinds of issues, mostly economic, inflation, except in Pennsylvania. So everyone's looking for a harbinger. Everyone's looking for that thing. So I'm watching it, and right off the bat, here's John Fetterman. And Fetterman starts speaking, and I'm thinking, oh, we got some problems here. I'm thinking like just a regular, person, right? A person who is just reacting to a guy, right? The guy in the hoodie who now he found a suit and tie. I mean, here I am in my closet in front of a gong and a barong Tagalog. And, I don't want to sound like I'm just so superficial, but all right, so he's wearing an ill-fitting dress shirt and a tie, and I'm feeling that I'm terribly shallow right now, right? I'm watching it and I'm saying, oh, this is not good. This is not. And I gather those feelings that I have, and I feel bad because that's not the important thing. The important thing is not if a candidate is dressed up so nicely, has well-coiffed hair, and has a nice suit. That's not what it's about. And I start listening to Fetterman, and like I said, initially I was not feeling very good. And then he starts talking about the elephant in the room.
Talk about the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush two words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up. And this campaign is all about, to me, is about fighting for everyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that needs to get back up, and fighting for all forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania that also got knocked down, that needs to get back up.
And when he said that, it knocked me back into what should be the way you look at a candidate. You don't look at the lies. You don't look at the false promises. You don't look at the suit he's wearing. You don't look at the way his hair is coiffed. You don't look at any of that. You look at what he's saying. He's saying, here's the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. Oz keeps talking about that. I mean, for me, that was the transformation that made me say, am I the guy who walks by the homeless person and doesn't even think about putting a quarter or a dollar bill or whatever I can afford into his cup? Am I the guy who shuns people who come up and looking for help? Am I the guy who is so superior that I look at John Fetterman and I say, nah, he's not the guy. I mean, there was something about what he said. If he's been knocked down, he's getting back up. If you are a member of a group that's been knocked down and had to get back up, John Fetterman's your guy. I mean, how can he not be? I mean, is the smarmy, well-dressed, well-coiffed former television host, oh, that sounds familiar, sort of like Dr. Trump, right? Is he your guy? A guy who was never in the trenches with you, has never fallen down, the overdog, the ultimate, I mean, the guy who sees himself as the winner? Is he your guy? Because I dare say, in a pinch, Mehmet Oz isn't going to be there with you. He's not going to be there for you. But after that opening from Fetterman, I believe him. He showed me his heart. He showed me his will. He showed me, all right, I'm not going to use the overused words, resilience, his authenticity. I'm not going to use those words. But I just want to, will comes to mind, his heart, his honesty. He had a stroke. Is that all Oz can say? Because, you know, Oz had plenty of gaffes in the debate, gaffes in terms of just simply not answering the questions with much substance, sort of weaseling out of the abortion question. He wants local officials to be in on decisions of doctors and your own personal choice. He wants local officials to be in on that conversation. In terms of abortion, Oz blew it. Now, in terms of fracking, Fetterman was, I guess he's for fracking, which is not a good position unless you're dealing with the locals in Pennsylvania, and the locals tend to be pro-fracking unless you're totally green. He said he was for fracking. He said he was against it once. Is he? You knew he was going to have some of these kind of confusing moments. I think one of the things about Fetterman you have to understand is this is 5 months after his stroke. I mean, I just don't think we should be stroke shamed. I mean, people have strokes, and it's hard, it's painful to deal with people when they're clearly struggling. You want to look away. You can't look away. He has the courage to look you in the eye and say, if you fell, if you've ever fallen, time to get back up. I'm going to represent you and all the other people on the fringe. That took more courage than any stand on any political issue they could have discussed. That took more courage and showed more about what a person is made of than, like I said, anything else discussed. And we mentioned the fracking confusion, and the answer we mentioned Oz and abortion, not good in terms of Oz. But I just want to tell you, John Fetterman, and it's not just a matter of if you're a Fetterman supporter, you're the base, and of course you're going to like whatever he does. Just like if you're an Oz supporter, you're going to think Oz Republican, yeah, good. All the people who are kind of like I was not in the Fetterman base, certainly not in the Oz base. I was in the middle. I wanted to see. I really have been following the race from afar and wanted to see Fetterman. I was a little taken aback by the NBC interview where they showed him with a closed caption and they talked about his struggle. But you know what? I don't think it's right to stroke shame anyone. I think this is a matter where, and you know how it's like, there's something that's awkward and something that's painful and you want to look away. And they're looking straight at you. And they're making this appeal. And they're talking to you like grown adults with a sense of not desperation, but a sense of pride and a sense of courage, standing up and asking you and telling you their circumstances and giving you the real reason why you should vote for them. In the case of Fetterman, I think he did that. I applaud him. It may have been the only thing he could have done. right? I mean, because he's not going to be polished. He's going to mush his words, like he said. He did mush his words. It was certainly not clear sometimes where he was going. But if our democracy hangs on a thread and hangs on whether or not the Democrats hold Pennsylvania, I think Fetterman compared to Oz, there's no question. Dr. Oz, who will sell you a diet pill he doesn't know about on the internet in a heartbeat. He'll do anything for money. That's not our guy. Fetterman, who says right out, if you've ever fallen and had to get back up, if you ever find yourself on the outside, ever find yourself ignored. He said that. And I said, John Fetterman is practically an Asian American. He knows me. He knows us. And certainly a man with a stroke. He's got, I think it's a temporary disability. They say he's going to recover. It's unclear, but say it is. I think he's shown that there's no cognitive disorder. There may be an issue with speech, but as you may or may not know, this would not be the first time that a sitting senator has had to serve while recovering from stroke. I mean, there was Senator Kirk from from Illinois. A big takeout in the Washington Post recently, which kind of puts it in perspective. I mean, Kirk was a Republican, and the Chicago Tribune endorsed, said, they wouldn't endorse him. Who they endorse instead? They endorsed Tammy Duckworth, a disabled veteran. I mean, maybe that was seen as a kind of a safe thing, right? I mean, I like Tammy Duckworth. I remember first seeing her in 2000, when was it? 2008 in Denver at the Democratic National Convention. I thought she was the future. So somehow I saw her as the future of the party, right? She was up there, a featured speaker in that Denver convention that Obama won. And, Mark Kirk, the man she replaced, it was also interesting because he made some kind of regrettable statements about Tammy Duckworth. He just said some things about her background, her Thai background, made some unfortunate racial comments. Duckworth was then just a member of Congress. She was running, though. And he said, I had forgotten that your parents came all the way from Thailand to serve George Washington. Which, yeah, Duckworth's mother was born in Thailand, but her father's side included a long history of service in the military. And Kirk apologized. This is according to Washington Post reporting of the time. So the point is, Kirk served until he was defeated by Duckworth. But look at the specter. Here's Kirk, who had stroke. Here's Duckworth, who clearly is a survivor, has disabilities, but has risen above that. And maybe I'm not sure how, the basis for their endorsement, but I'm sure they felt more emboldened to go with Duckworth because she was a woman. She was a minority. She was a disabled vet. And I'm sure that made her more, it's almost like when people fire you as a minority and they figure, well, who are we going to replace him with? Well, let's replace him with a minority woman. People play all those kind of games all the time. I'm sure that kind of softened the blow when they had to say, yeah, we're not going to endorse Kirk. But he did serve, after, he got his stroke in 2012. He was in the Senate from 2010 to 2016. So anyway, Washington has been talking about that story and saying, okay, stroke, no big deal. It happens. But it comes up now. And what was your reaction? Because I'm telling you my reaction. I initially saw Fetterman and I wasn't comfortable with it. I'm just telling you the truth. I wasn't comfortable with it. And then suddenly, my God, the initial statement he made was not very clear. He stumbled, sort of like I am now, right? And then he said, look, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. And to his credit, it really brought me around and it shamed me. It shamed me into thinking, I'm not going to kick this guy to the curb. I'm not going to. He had a stroke. He's not dead. And Mark Kirk, the Illinois senator I was referring to, he served and he was in worse condition than Fetterman. So, like I said, I was not a member of the Fetterman base. I was just in the middle, an observer. I don't even live in Pennsylvania. But he made that appeal. Said, if you've ever been knocked down, you had to get back up. If you've ever been ignored, if you've been overlooked, I'm your guy. And that's all I needed to hear. More important than any issue he could have talked about. And he kind of blew it on fracking, I'll admit. But you got Mehmet Oz, who essentially is this carpetbagging doctor who showbiz isn't good enough for him. He needs to go into politics, which is showbiz for ugly people. That's the phrase that Jay Leno is associated with coining that. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate in terms of, but that's the first time I heard it. Jay Leno saying politics is showbiz for ugly people. Believe me, if Mehmet Oz gets elected to the Senate, we have not begun to see the kind of ugly he could produce, because he is really he's a rich guy who will say what he wants, will do what he wants, whatever Trump wants. That was his ticket. And frankly, any guy who will sell you questionable diet pills over the internet using his name and his being a doctor as the only thing you can rely on, I don't trust him. I just don't trust. I wouldn't trust Mehmet Oz. Fetterman, after that statement, who he's fighting for, that was convincing enough for me. In fact, when he talked about being overlooked, being ignored, who is he talking to? Blacks, indigenous, people of color. Who can he relate to? Who does the guy in the suit relate to? I didn't like him when he had his show. I'm not going to like him now when he's running for the Senate. It's Fetterman. It's Fetterman. And all the other talk, I don't know. If you're an Asian American in Philadelphia, in parts of Pennsylvania, I say Philadelphia because I know the city slightly. I stayed, you wander around the airport. You get put out in a hotel in Valley Forge. You have to ride the subways in Philly. Don't stop at the main line. You stop way out there. You drive, you take the subways. You walk around looking for a vegan cheesesteak. Oh, hard to do. Hard, but you take the walk. I'm telling you, there are a lot of ignored, forgotten people in Pennsylvania. If you're an Asian American, don't be put off by John Fetterman. Don't be put off by the stroke. That could have been an Asian accent. So I want to talk about something else. I mean, I have friends all over the country, and when they talked about the earthquake in California, they think about their California friend, and they say, "Oh, Emil, what's the earthquake? Are you okay?" No, I'm still standing in front of my gong and my barong Tagalog here. It's Filipino American History Month for another 6 days or so. But no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Here's the thing about earthquakes. If you've lived in California, if you're a native like I am and lived in California this long, hey, an earthquake hits, you don't take anything below 7 really seriously. I mean, a 5 is big. Don't get me wrong. A 5 is big, but that means you're going to shake like this instead of like, I mean, 7, 8, you start seeing chandeliers. A 5, you got to be really close to the epicenter to start seeing, shaking. And like I said, it was centered in the Alum Rock area in San Jose. And I'm I'd say about 100 miles away from that. And so I had to be really, really close to feel anything. I'm sure some people felt it close. I don't mean to take away from their experience. But, reporting of an earthquake magnifies the further away you are. And it's like, oh my God, have you fallen into the earth, Emil? No, I'm okay. Some people close to Alum Rock, San Jose, maybe they got a little shake, and they said this is like the biggest earthquake in the last year or so. But I'm telling you, people in California, they've lived through quakes. They're resilient. They know there's going to be aftershocks. They know that if there's a 5, there might be a 3 here and a 5 there and a 4 there, like little aftershocks after the main shake. But that was like a message, but it wasn't the wake-up call. I mean, wake-up calls. A wake-up call has to be like in the 7 or 8s. That's a wake-up call. A 5, that's like an email from a friend and a reminder that make sure you got a bag packed just in case. But we're okay. We're okay. It does tell you though that this October is earthquake season. The World Series, 1989, right? Oakland. That was terrible. And I believe that was 7. Right? That was a big one. This was a 5. So we're okay. But I'm telling you, there are other things I'm worried about. Like democracy, like the Fetterman race, like is everyone voted? I'm going to say this again, because you can't say it enough. If you haven't registered to vote, it's not too late. Thank goodness there are some states that have same-day voting. You can vote the same day. I believe in Hawaii. And I think that's where we should go, same-day voting. But there's others that say you have to vote 30 days, 15 days, or register 15 days before, 30 days before. In California, it's 15 days, but you can still register even if you miss a deadline. Go to the California Registrar of Voters. If you're an Asian American in the most Asian American state in the country and want to vote, you should vote. You can't vote online. I don't think they'll let you vote online, but you can vote at the registrar's office. They'll make you a provisional voter. You can vote. They'll put your ballot in a separate container and count the provisional ballots eventually. But you'll get counted. That's the important thing. If you're not registered and you're California, there's still time. Register to vote. Just a few more things. It's coming up next Monday, and we have a few things coming up. Next Monday is Halloween, and I've been thinking a lot about affirmative action because the Supreme Court is going to be talking about it. They're going to be the hearing, the much-awaited hearing is going to happen, and this is it, right? The Supreme Court could have kicked it back to the lower court and say, lower court, Harvard won, we'll go with that. But no, they didn't. They took the case, they're going to hear it, and now we have to sweat this idea of, will the 6-3 court, the 6-3 conservative court prevail, or will it be 5-4, or will it be, a little more reasonable? I think it's probably going to be reasonable from the standpoint, ultimately, of narrowing affirmative action, but certainly not enlarging, but narrowing it and making it harder to achieve racial equity. That's my guess. The merit, they're going to hear arguments on the merit on Monday, but we've heard all the arguments. I mean, by now, it's been several years that we've heard the arguments. And Harvard prevailed, like I said, at the lower court. They prevailed in appeal. They did not. And then here it is at the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, like I said, could have just kicked it back down, but they want to hear it. And remember, this isn't just Harvard, it's the University of North Carolina. I don't know much about their circumstances except the history of not being as diverse. But look, the bottom line of all this is that the case is there because of professional anti-affirmative action hands. This guy, Ed Blum, out of Virginia, he worked to destroy voting rights, the Voting Rights Act. Now he's working to destroy affirmative action, and he's made it his life work. And unfortunately, now we've got to make it our life work to push back and to fight this in the courts. And the courts have upheld affirmative action all throughout the years, from the Bakke decision in '68 through Grutter, through Fisher v. Texas, which was a case where Fisher was a white female plaintiff backed by this guy, Ed Blum. He lost. And because he lost so badly, he said, we're coming back. And we're coming back with the right victim, the right minority. We're coming back with Asian Americans. And now he's back at the Supreme Court, just as he said. He's got that case. And you remember, after he lost Fisher, he was actually ambulance chasing, really putting things on the internet, saying, if you didn't get into Harvard, let's talk. He got enough Asians who didn't get into Harvard. They formed a group, but make no mistake, they'll say they're students for fair admissions or whatever they call themselves. The Asian, mostly Latter-day immigrants from the 80s or 90s. And they didn't get in. They feel cheated. They feel discriminated against. And that's their passion. That's why Ed Blum really needed them. Because they are pretty good plaintiffs. But as I always like to say, how are Asian Americans discriminated against when they make up like almost 30% of Harvard? The last 4 years, there's been like nearly 30% in that freshman class each year. So, I mean, this is a far cry from what Harvard was when I applied, when there was the admissions officer said, well, we don't do affirmative action, Emil. And I believe them. I mean, no, they could admit anyone they wanted. And they admitted me. But there was no plan. It was just the admissions process. Who got in? Well, my grades were okay. Were they the best? They weren't the best. But they were okay. I went to one of the best public schools in the nation. And they picked me. I think my experience is a little different from other younger people who have experienced the admissions at Harvard, say in the last 10, 15 years. I was there early when they were just trying to figure out, how do we get admissions that works for everybody? And the fact that they're still arguing this shows it hasn't been done right yet to anyone's satisfaction, or at least to the rejects' satisfaction. I mean, if you got in, you're satisfied. Yeah, I got in. But there's still grievances from the people who didn't. So I have my thoughts. I'm going to write them down. I'm going to put them in the ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, over the next day or so. So you can read a perspective of someone who I'll share with you my thoughts about what is going to happen, because they're not going to come down with a decision on Monday. They'll hear both sides, and then they'll rule probably before next June. But it doesn't mean, we'll hear the questions, but again, the questions don't really mean anything in terms of how a justice may vote, how Coney Barrett will vote, how Gorsuch, how Clarence Thomas will vote. Can't really tell by, they asked antagonistic questions. Oh, they asked really, softballs. Can't tell. I have a feeling that we're going to get ultimately we're going to get less affirmative action than more, but it just means our work gets harder. It doesn't kill equity. The drive for equity, the drive for equality doesn't go away. It's just, hey, you have to deal with cancer, and they say, go see a foot doctor. It's kind of sleight of hand. It's misdirection. it means it's going to be slower to get to answers. But it doesn't mean that it's impossible to get to something that would seem fair. It just means it's going to be a lot slower when you can't come up with something like what is known as affirmative action. When you have to be race neutral totally, it's not impossible. But like I said, it's like you're trying to solve for cancer and you've got a foot doctor. And you may not get to where you want to be very quickly. But if you're creative, you might get to an answer. I mean, that's really the problem that we have going forward until we get justices. I mean, certainly the suits will continue. There'll be more suits. And because the only thing that's changed here between the Fisher v. Texas case and this case is the court. Court's different. So you got to keep trudging along until the court changes. Either some kind of reform, meaningful reform, or someone has a change of heart. You know, a lot of conservatives had changes of heart over the course of affirmative action's life. They weren't so, right-wing Trumpian doctrinaire types. They were fairer in the past. And we got to hope for something like that. So that's the next piece I'm working on. Affirmative action, what it means, what to look forward to. If you're Asian American, I think it's going to mean different things because it split our community. And I'll mention that in my piece as well. I mean, we're as divided as everyone else on this. And it's because some people insist that, hey, I got the highest scores, I got the best grades, I should get in, right? No. What makes you think that? And then suddenly, nothing makes sense anymore. It makes perfect sense. But it means you have to redefine merit. And you have to redefine what that means. I think the real problem is affirmative action. You got to get rid of that name. Affirmative action. Affirmative action is dead. Diversity, the search for diversity and equity and equality, that's not dead. And then you have to figure out, well, who needs help? Because, one of the startling facts in the Harvard case is that if you gave everyone with straight A's and high test scores, if you gave them automatic admission, there'd be no space for anybody. And so people have to cut schools some slack in terms of what they feel is the mix they want. I think that's an argument yet to be had, because everyone's just seeing in terms of race. So affirmative action, it's not going to end with the hearing on Monday, but maybe we could begin to think about it, because it's going to require some creative thinking, and it's going to require some people, everyone, trying to get together to solve the problem. Because if we don't come together on this, we'll have another 40 years of litigation. I'm almost certain of that. I'm almost certain of that. Yeah, how do you define who gets help? I got some thoughts about affirmative action. I'll share on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. Look for it coming up. Oh, Asian American or Filipino American History Month. We talked about Larry Itliong yesterday on show 419 or 418. This is show 419. Itliong, I love Larry Itliong. He's like my dad. I mean, came to the Philippines around the same time. But I was thinking about it in these terms, and it goes back to Fetterman. It goes back to our talk about Fetterman. Larry was a union leader. He left. I don't know if he didn't get along or if he chafed under the merged organizations between what he led and what Cesar Chavez led. But the AFL-CIO always wanted Larry Itliong to stay. In fact, they were offering money to stay. They said, well, we'll give you money to stay. He wouldn't take it. That was the thing about Larry Itliong. He was proud. He was his own man. And I was thinking about this. I mean, you need someone like Itliong who's going to fight for you, right? That's almost like Fetterman. Although, here's a question. Would you vote for Larry Itliong? I mean, if Itliong was on the ballot, would you vote for him? And some people say, Seven Finger Larry with the cigars. And I mean, I can see him like with a picket sign out on strike, but you see people get into that. He didn't have the look of a Mehmet Oz. I mean, I was thinking about as we consider, we got Itliong and we got Sunak, the British Prime Minister, the new South Asian British Prime Minister, kind of like the revenge of Lord Mountbatten. Actually, not Lord Mountbatten. It was like avenging or coming up in and coming back and laughing at Mountbatten and Churchill, saying, "Here I am. You conquered us. We're conquering you. We're leading the whole darn country." I mean, Rishi Sunak is really, I mean, his problem was he was too elite, too sharp. So yesterday I thought, he could use little Larry Itliong. You know, you could be too polished, like Sunak, like Mehmet Oz. When they say, how about the salt of the earth? Oh, you mean like Larry Itliong? You mean like John Fetterman? That's a game. And like I said at the top of the show today, Fetterman convinced me. He convinced me that if we trust and believe his doctors that he's on the road to recovery, I would rather ride with him, looking out for the downtrodden, the overlooked, the ignored. I would ride with him than with Mehmet Oz. If I'm an Asian American, I hear Fetterman talk. I hear Larry Itliong. I hear an Asian American accent. I see an Asian American. That's a selling point for Fetterman. And that's it. Hey, look, next couple days, it's going to be kind of weird. I'm going to go live. I'll have some recorded stuff. I'll have some replays. But we're going to continue doing this. Continue talking. So check out amok.com for the replays. This is show 419. Check out Yeah. Twitter at Emil Amok. It's there. Use your finger. Check out Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. But mostly check out amok.com. That's where you get all the replays. Of course. Oh, YouTube. Oh, I love it when you go to YouTube because, it's there. You can see what I do and say, oh, God, Emil, can't you be more like these other guys? No. I do this. So the YouTube channel is just Emil Guillermo, right? Oh, no, at Emil Amok1. YouTube gives you handles. At Emil Amok1, check out the YouTube channel. All right. Regular listeners to the show know that, I like to meditate. I stop. You don't get, I catch myself getting angry. I catch myself wanting to punch Mimidas through the screen. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's why I like that Sharon Salzberg definition about meditation or mindfulness. She says, mindfulness, she asked someone, she's quoting a 10-year-old black kid. A 10-year-old black kid says, oh, mindfulness, that's when I don't punch that guy in the face. That's mindfulness. Man, so many times I'm catching myself. I'm not punching that guy in the face. I'm not. I'm not. That's how you know it's working. That's how you know it's working. And really, it always boils down to self-esteem, how you feel about yourself and how you take care of yourself and how you imbue the world and you with a little self-love. A little self-love goes a long way. Self-love. Not like the college freshman kind of self-love, but like a real self-love, self-compassion. AKA be kind to yourself. You belong. You're not an imposter. Be kind to yourself. Self-love, the kind of love you offer first to others, those you love and those you hate. And look what happens. It comes back. Twofold, threefold, fourfold, however many folds you want, it comes back. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo, something will be up, 2 p.m. Pacific, live. Oh, hey, check out this thing on Asian Week. Asian Week has this thing, this database. It's wild. The Asian Week database. I used to write for Asian Week so long. If you go to database.asianweek.com, check it out. You see, oh, look at that picture of me. Wow, that's you, Emil? Yeah, that was me. Had the little flower, but they pulled out a story about the 20 that was written 27 years ago. The database goes back about 30, 40 years. And my columns, I started writing for Asian Week in earnest. The Emil Amok column started in 1995. And I've been writing a column continuously. You see them now mostly on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. But check out the database. It's at, let's see, what is that database number or URL? It's at database.asianweek.com, and then search for me and read all about how I had this talk show called Amok by the Bay. How when I got fired, look at Filipinos rally behind ousted TV news reporter. Wow, well that was very nice, very nice. Anyway, yeah, check that out. You might find it interesting. Asian Week. Anyway, so we'll be back right here either replay or live or in some different form. We'll be out there. Emil here. Till next time. Mahal